On today's show, Jalen Green, Alperen Sengun, and the rest of the Houston Rockets young core showed out in their return to basketball action. We're going to break it all down for you coming up on today's Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Mondays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. The best way you can help us out is to listen every single day on whatever podcast platform of your choice. That helps us out a ton. Now, today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. Joining us now for the first recap episode of the 2024-2025 NBA season, preseason, is none other than your weekly co-host, diehard Houston Rockets fan and NBA draft enthusiast, Madison Moore. You can track down on Twitter at MadmanLeaks. Here to talk about the very first taste of Houston Rockets basketball that we get this season. The Rockets did walk away with an L, 122-113. But if you stopped watching at about the midway part of the third quarter, this Rockets team looked really, really good. And the major takeaway, if you're just box score watching here, is that the Rockets, third string guys are not as good as the Utah Jazz first and second string guys. That's basically the major takeaway from this game. But when the Rockets' key players were actually out there, they looked damn good in this game, Madison.
Yeah, man, it is honestly those third string guys kind of started against Lauri Markkanen, so you could say the first team guys. But yeah, man, no, the Rockets, man, thoroughly impressed. I mean, that first half and in the early part of the second half is exactly what the Rockets fans have been looking for. This was a young core that we all expected to make improvements. A very deep team that we all were excited to watch, but kind of wondered, well, how will everybody eat in this type of core? And how will they, will they be selfish? Will they look for their own shots? And man, was it the best case scenario? I mean, we got to see guys really getting after it defensively, especially in the first half. Man, they put a seal on the basket on the Utah Jazz. Now we understand the Utah's not projected to be a really good team, but they did what they were supposed to do when you come out defensively. I think the offense looked a bit wonky in the first quarter. It seems like guys were a little rusty getting in and out of sets. Some little weird turnovers here and there, but overall the team kind of got it together, especially in that second half. I thought led by the bench mob, getting the offense going, getting out and running, and almost everyone, all of the young core, including some of the vets, ate tonight. And it was a really good continuity thing to see with these guys. And really, you can look up and down the box score and see, hey, man, these guys really can do it where everybody gets a piece of this pie when they're playing. Just a quick refresher, if you didn't hear or watch I'm assuming most people who are listening to a podcast about the Rockets watched the game, but they were missing a few kind of key contributors. So there was no Dillon Brooks, no Tari Eason, no Jock Landale, and no Jeff Green. So four guys kind of resting this game. We knew Ime Udoka was planning to rest guys in both of these first two preseason games, so he elected to rest those four guys. Amin Thompson getting the starting nod in place of Dillon Brooks. And man, that starting lineup with Fred, Jalen, Amin, Jabari, and Alp. Look, I mean, I should have put like an over-under or something on how many games it would take before Rockets fans started calling for Amin Thompson to start over Dillon Brooks, and it's already happening. We're one preseason game in, and I see Twitter just lighting up with people saying this should be the starting lineup on opening night of the season. People are bought in on what Amin Thompson brings to this team. Look, I was really impressed. I mean, you talk about the defense, early on in this game, especially there in that first quarter. I mean, you look up and the Rockets had multiple stretches where they held the Jazz completely scoreless from the floor. At one point, I mean, the Jazz had like 4 points scored with 2 or 3 minutes left in that first quarter. Rockets were basically pitching a shutout early in this game, and that was in large part because the Rockets starters were really locked in defensively.
Big part of that was Amin Thompson. We know that he's already the best defender on the team, period. But one other guy that I think really stood out, and kind of on both ends of the floor, and we'll get into more specifics and stuff, I thought Alp's defense looked really good. I thought he was moving really well out there. But across the board, the starters all looked really solid. To me, though, the number one thing that this team has been talking about consistently, that Ime has been preaching, is playing with better pace, right? Getting out, really pushing tempo, especially off good stops, good defensive moments and everything. And that felt very evident in this game. We saw opportunities in that first quarter where the Rockets were pushing the pace and getting out in transition a bit more. They didn't capitalize on as many of them as they probably should have early in that first quarter. But that second quarter, man, is where things took off in a big way. And I mean, we saw, I don't know who was more electric in this game between Jalen Green and Cam Whitmore, but both of those guys were having a field day with the Utah Jazz in the second quarter.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Cam Whitmore really kind of ignited the fast break, not even just in the second quarter, but also in the first quarter. I thought he was like one of the first guys to get out and really run. I thought the athleticism on this team really popped. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we really got to see our athletes get out and out athlete other teams. And like you said, sometimes there was some mixed match or misses or conversion problems in the first quarter. But like you said, in the second half, Cam really put on a show. I thought Amin's defense was incredible, leading to more in the break. And like soon as Sheppard got in, he gets a steal, leads to a Jalen Green, beautiful and one layup, reverse layup. That was just, picture perfect, highlight the type of things that really get this team up, get this team going, get their energy going. And you've seen that flow into that second quarter, where I think they scored 40 points in the second quarter. I mean, these guys were on one. And of course, capped off by excellent Jalen Green heater quarter, where he just gets, super hot from three. And I like that spurt came off an assist from Fred VanVleet to a corner three, catch and shoot three, because those are the easy opportunities that when Jalen lets the game come to him, he gets these easy shots and converts on them, and he starts to get his rhythm. And once you get your rhythm, then he goes off for 10 to 13 point spurts like we saw in the second half. In the second quarter. But that was just an excellent display of Rockets athleticism, Rockets defense, and Rockets attention to detail. I even thought their switches were just really excellent. There were plays, the guys like Amin, we know what Amin's going to bring defensively, but even Jalen, I saw switching, scram switching on, off ball, really taking the challenge. And I was impressed with Reed. A lot of his defense, he had some mistakes, but I really liked his defense. I thought for the most part, he stayed in front of guys and he had active hands. I thought they were giving nothing easy in that first half, and that really ignited our offense. The defense just kind of waned as well because they were in such an up and down pace.
The defense also kind of waned when the bench guys started getting subbed in.
Oh my God!
It was all over the place. You don't got to take anything from the final score of this game. When the Rockets were playing their actual key contributors, they looked really good. That should be your major takeaway from this one. But seriously, that stretch by Jalen Green in the second quarter, I thought a big part of it was it didn't feel like it was just, okay, he caught fire from three. That was some of it, but it also came from, right, he had the and one a little bit earlier in the game, right at the rim, got finished through contact and everything. But then later he had the corner three from Fred. Then he rolls up and he gets a good, strong pick and roll opportunity, and he just drives it straight into the Jazz defense, and nobody meets him, right? And he elevates and just throws it down, right? And that's one of those things, like that dunk kind of felt like it got him going a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then he comes down, hits another kind of heat check 3-pointer. And then Steven Adams checks in the game, and then Jalen Green gets back-to-back triples off of the Steven Adams screens. And we're going to talk about Steven Adams a little bit more later on in the episode, but my goodness, those Steven Adams screens, it's like running into a brick wall, the amount of separation that he is creating for the guards out there. And that was a big part of the surge from Jalen Green in that quarter, was just getting those wide open opportunities from beyond the arc, him being able to get set, get his feet under him, not having the pressure of a defender on him, because again, the defender's trying to fight through the boulder that is Steven Adams. Look, I'm sick of hearing about Dwayne The Rock Johnson, all right? I want to talk more about Steven the Boulder Adams. That's where we're at right now. So, look, coming up, we got to spend a little bit more time. We're going to dive into some specifics on who stood out in this game, why they stood out. Going to talk a little bit about what Steven Adams brings to this team, the good and some of the bad, unfortunately, from Steven Adams. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Look, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, you live play-by-play, and so much more on the exact same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just head on over to FanDuel.com. Take a look at things like division winners, conference winners, different season awards, or just the outright Super Bowl favorites. Right now, the Chiefs plus 500 to win it all, the 49ers plus 700, the Ravens right behind them at plus 750, and then a three-way tie. The Detroit Lions, the Buffalo Bills, and your Houston Texans plus 1,100 to win this year's Super Bowl. So for all those odds and so much more, head on over to FanDuel.com. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. We definitely want to hear your reactions to this first Rockets preseason game. Definitely drop your thoughts in the YouTube comments so that we can check those out. Now, just to kind of put a bow on the Jalen Green part of the discussion here, you know, it really felt like a strong overall game from him. He started off maybe a little shaky early in the game, right? He had that early offensive foul. He had another turnover not long after that, and then kind of like, you know, had a frustration foul right after that. And I thought, oh man, like, please don't have a bad game. Like in the first preseason game, Twitter's going to light up. It's going to be bad. But he found himself later on in the game. He got some good opportunities right at the rim, right? And then as he got into rhythm, we know he's a rhythm player. He had that, you know, turbocharged second quarter, and I'm sure that if Ime had, you know, extended the leash for the starters, and if he had, you know, played them like it was a regular season game and played them to their full minutes threshold, we would have seen a Jalen that was going to pop off for, you know, this could have been a 30-point game for Jalen Green, all things considered, with how much he started heating up there in that second quarter. But the other guard that we got to talk about here, inserted into the starting lineup, and again, Rockets fans are going to be championing his causes all season long. Amin Thompson, just so good, man. The defense stands out, but to me, I think the number one thing, Madison, we've been talking about this a lot this offseason, he got some on-ball reps in this game, and it looked pretty solid, actually.
Yeah, man, I think the biggest revelation for me was handle. You know what I mean? Of course, the defense was still the best thing he did on court, which translated to easy buckets and transition. But the improvement area that I thought Amin needed to improve almost just as much, if not more, is his handle, so he can get all on-ball reps and start to weaponize the incredible passing ability that he has. And this was the first step towards that. Even, you know, and we're finally starting to get to see him, you know, really explore that part of his game. There was a possession where he was in a pick and roll, screen and roll, and got into the paint and tried to behind the back pass to Steven Adams that kind of just sailed out of Steven Adams' hands. But those were the type of things where I'm like, oh no, that is special. Like, those are the things that as a young player, we want him to explore in his game. And now that it looks like his handle's finally starting to come around, we're going to see parts of that part of Amin's game. And we're going to see some real Ben Simmons-esque, you know, highlights and drives. There was one play where Amin got all the way downhill and hit Jalen for an open three. I think he missed the three, but it was just an incredible kick out pass. And those are the type of things I think we're going to see more and more often in his offense. And another thing, there wasn't a spacing issue. There at no point did it feel like I'm like the team, you know, and that might just be a Utah Jazz thing, as they are a bad team and they're not game planning properly. But as of now, his inability to shoot is not hurting him. He's so much more of a better impact on the game than his inability to shoot. And when you combine that with his ability to play off ball, you know, get lobs, be disruptive defensively, this guy is really just the ultimate Swiss Army knife, and really is, you know, vaulting himself into the top of this young core.
Absolutely. I mean, look, he's not being realistic about this. He's not going to be the starter right out of the gate, even though he looked really solid in this first preseason game. And he might, depending on, who's missing or who's resting the next game, he might get another start down the line. We know that Ime Udoka loves Amin Thompson. He's so bought in on what he brings to the table. He talks about his versatility all the time. You can plug him into any position on the floor, all that stuff. Dillon Brooks is going to return, and Dillon Brooks is going to return to the starting lineup at some point, probably as early as next game. So, slow your roll, pump the brakes on the Amin Thompson deserves to be a starter train. We're going to see plenty of Amin Thompson, though, over the course of the season. He's going to play a very pivotal role for this Houston Rockets team. I want to make sure that we highlight, though, we'll talk about Cam here in a minute. I want to make sure we highlight Alperen Sengun because
for sure.
Alpi, I felt like he just kind of quietly did what we know that he can already do, and it very much felt like there was kind of a directive, from the coaching staff to share the ball, to give plenty of guys opportunities in this preseason game. We saw, up and down the roster, right? We saw Jabari get some reps. We saw Min get reps. Sengun. Fred really didn't do much of. Fred was just wheeling and dealing. He didn't take too many. He was 0-4. Didn't score. Oh, I apologize. Got 2 points at the free throw line. My bad. But didn't hit a shot from the field. But he finished the game with 8 assists. Fred was just out there playing quarterback, right? Getting guys set up in their spots, which is basically what he's supposed to do. Now, he's going to have some points in the regular season where they do need him to hit his outside shots and whatnot. But I think the direction this team is growing is, Fred shouldn't have to be relied on to be a heavy hitter for this team. The young guys should be the heavy hitters. And we saw that take place in this game with Sengun, with Jalen, with Cam coming off the bench, with Amin Thompson putting up some points. That's what you want to see, is you want to see the young guys doing the heavy lifting. You want to see the veterans be the stabilizing force for this team. But across the board, everybody kind of got a little bit of run. I think that for me, watching Sengun play, though, and this was something that stood out to me during the training camp scrimmages that we saw, and it's even more apparent, watching him go up against like other NBA competition. Physically, Sengun looks good. Like, he looks like he might be in the best shape of his career at this point. And, you go back to thinking about the fact that the Rockets coaching staff sent over coaches to spend the entire offseason with him in Turkey. They were doing like 2-a-day, 3-a-day workouts. He was getting up every single morning early, crack of dawn and working on his body. He looks like he's in the best shape of his career. And I think for a guy that had to adjust to that high usage role last season, that was a really big adjustment for him. He'd never been utilized that way, in his career to that point. So this year, assuming that the Rockets are going to still use Sengun as kind of their centerpiece, and a lot of the offense is going to go through him, whether him posting up, whether him being, involved heavy, in heavy pick and roll offensive schemes with Fred, with Jalen, with whoever else. I think Sengun's physicality, like him being able to hold up over the course of a season, is going to be huge. And again, defensively, he looked aggressive on certain switches and certain matchups. He just looked really good out there. And I got the sense that, like, if the Rockets really needed to, they could have gone back to him a lot more than they did, and he would have just gone to town. And he and Jalen could have easily broken 30 points each this game if they really wanted to win. And that's the kind of night that they were both having.
Yeah, to me, I think what was interesting about the way Sengun played offensively, particularly, is I don't think we ran a lot of offense through Sengun. And I think Sengun was primarily used as a play finisher and just in every action as a screener. And we really used him as that play finisher and secondary playmaker out of those spots. And that's why it kind of just seemed like Sengun wasn't super involved, but every now and again you see him flash. He make a great pass, or he'll score or finish a layup. But just really making the game a lot easier on Sengun as an offensive player. And then you look up at the box score, he has 17, 4, and 4 in 22 minutes. Like, just that's excellent stuff. And then he doesn't have to carry so much of a burden because the team is so talented. Now he has guys that can make plays for him, and not just him making plays for everybody else. And he's still so good as a secondary creator that even, when the defense is in rotation trying to get back to him, he can still make plays out of those spots. And it just, to me, showed the versatility of Sengun. He doesn't have to be this, everything run through him type of guy. We can play him in a lot of ways, which frees him up and makes the game a lot easier on him. And you talk about durability. That allows guys to last throughout the course of these games and play better defense on the other end of the floor because they're making plays for one another. And I felt that way about Jalen as well. Like, you know what I mean? There was a lot of times where Fred were making plays for him or Amin was making plays for Jalen or someone else. But these guys are really playing
they got
together
easy
in this
opportunities. For the
yes, that's what I'm saying.
Some of that might be preseason. It might be, it's the Utah Jazz. They're going to be bad.
Yeah,
some of that might be
Utah
like, you take it with a grain of salt, but it was the way that some of their shots were developing, right? It wasn't just Jalen having to ISO and get downhill by himself. It wasn't, or just he gets one screen and then he's, attacking a defense where everything's collapsing on him. Or it wasn't Sengun posting up and backing down multiple dribbles into, an old school back to the basket post up where then the defense collapses on him and he's having to force the issue through 2 or 3 defenders. It didn't really feel like any of that. It felt like the Rockets generated a lot of easy offense in this game, a lot of high quality offense. There was one kind of little wrinkle play that the Rockets ran really early on in the first quarter where it resulted in it was a Sengun post up, and then Fred completely lost his man on a little curl, a little flare to the corner, and it was a wide open Fred VanVleet 3. He bricked it, but it was a really nice little wrinkle. I was like, man, I don't think we saw this play at any point last season where Fred got a wide open corner 3 off an LP post up. Run that back again a few more times in the future. So I get the sense that there's a lot that Ime is ready to kind of deploy with this team, and we've only gotten a little taste of it so far. He's going to get to his heavy hitting stuff. He's going to get to his bread and butter plays for this Rockets team for their offense. This kind of felt like a feel it out game. Let everybody get some reps. Let everybody kind of, get in the mud a little bit, knock the rust off, play against another team. And that's kind of what the takeaway should be here again. And the young guys all just look so good in this game. Coming up, we got to talk a little bit about Cam Whitmore, what the vet, the mountain, Steven Adams brought to this team, as well as Reed Sheppard. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Look, GameTime has a new feature called GameTime Picks that filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of different ticketing offers. But that's not the only feature that they have that makes life so much easier. They've got their GameTime ticket coverage, which is the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Their lowest price guarantee, views from your seat, so you know exactly what to expect. My personal favorite is their all-in pricing feature. When you download the GameTime app, you toggle on the all-in pricing feature, and they are fully transparent from start to finish. I don't know about you, my least favorite thing when I'm buying tickets to a game or a concert or whatever, go through the whole process, then at the very end they hit you with the digital handling fee and the service charges and all this stuff. You wind up paying more in fees than you do for your actual tickets. It's the worst. Doesn't happen with GameTime. Toggle on their all-in pricing feature and they are fully transparent with you the whole way through. Take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? It's game time. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Madison, we went through that whole conversation about Alperen Sengun, and we didn't even highlight the fact that he pulled some threes in this game with sky high confidence. I'm talking, he had that catch and release 3. I don't know how many times we talked about it last season where he wasn't even looking to take 3-pointers when he was out on the perimeter. And guess what? We talked about it in training camp with Ime Udoka. He said it was a mentality thing for Sengun. He said he's got the touch, he's got the ability to shoot threes, but it's about the mentality. And guess what? That's coaching right there, because Alp saw a little bit of a window where he was on the perimeter, and he said, screw the play that we're supposed to be running. He turned and he switched that very first 3. It was beautiful to see. I mean, I love that confidence for Alperen Sengun. And again, if he can get that confidence back on that 3 ball and again, get it to a place where it's a reliable weapon in his offensive bag, I mean, the dude's going to be unguardable this season. He's already borderline unguardable last year, but he's going to reach a new level this year if he's got that in his bag. Now, the other guy who had some fun from long distance in this game, one Cam Whitmore. it almost feels like a disservice, the fact that Cam had such an electric game, 17 points on 6 of 8 shooting off the Rockets bench, had just an insane poster on Walker Kessler.
Couple of them.
Dude, he took off from the free throw line. Like I saw like a screen cap of like the highlight, right, where like Walker Kessler is like in front of him, like well in front of the restricted area. Cam has both feet planted, and the screenshot was just like, this turned into a dunk. And like that's who Cam is. He was levitating through the air when he yammed it on Walker Kessler.
I mean, I thought it was a excellent display of actual pace, change of speed. Because if you watch that play again, the reason that that picture looks like that is because Cam kind of lulls him to sleep. He kind of looks like he's just surveying, and then once he gets to the top of the 3-point line, he explodes so quick that Walker Kessler doesn't even have time to jump. Like Walker Kessler is so unexpected by that burst.
Back, yeah.
Yes. That's how explosive even his gather into that step was. And by then it was curtains. And it's just another electric, powerful play from Cam. And then next go round, he backdoors and dunks on him again. He
dunked on two guys on that backdoor dunk. It was, Cam was on one in this game, right? You could tell, and even defensively, I thought he had some good moments defensively, kind of shooting the gap, playing some passing lanes in there. Collectively, I thought the whole team did a really good job. Especially again, we highlighted the starters with their kind of the defensive fortitude they showed early on. They were really disruptive, forcing a lot of turnovers. The Rockets got out in transition a lot in this game. I'm trying to make sure. Do I have the transition numbers? I don't know if they finished the game, but at one point the Rockets were outscoring the Jazz like 24-4 in fast break scoring in this game. Like those are good fast break numbers, right? That is playing to your strengths. That's playing to the youth, the athletes on this roster. And of course, Cam Whitmore, he splashed a couple threes in there as well, which allows me to play this one soundbite. Splash! I love that soundbite. I'm going to get a lot of use out of that this season. Another Rocket that didn't connect, unfortunately, from beyond the arc, despite what you would assume, Reed Sheppard. I think it was a little bit of a mixed bag for Reed Sheppard in his NBA debut, preseason debut.
Rook.
Rook, right? Rook.
Rook. You know what I'm saying? Rookie first. There was definitely some preseason jitters, but all in all, I like what Reed did. Like Reed came out and gave the team what it needed. A guy who got us organized. He competed defensively and used his hands to be disruptive. I mean, that's the bare minimum. That's all you can ask. He knew where his spots on the floor was. He got to his midi. He made a couple. He missed a couple. And I think he only had about 2 3-point attempts. And he didn't convert on those, but we know that stuff will come. Like nobody's worried about Reed shooting those threes. And I think he kind of got him up real quick. You know what I mean? Like almost like, hey, take a breath. But it's just first game jitters. I think Reed is going to be just fine. And I thought he played very well. I thought usually when Fred goes off the floor, those minutes are really, really tough for the Rockets, especially getting into their sets, in and out of their sets, and finding offense. But Reed kept the team it's so much of a high pace. I thought we didn't even feel it. It just is pure fun. And it's good to have another floor general out there because honestly, Fred VanVleet was the only one we had on the team last year. And as we can see with Aaron Holiday's minutes, floor general style point guard is just not his forte. And we need another guy that can get us organized and we can trust with the ball to get other guys involved. And so all in all, I think you could tell the preseason jitters. We know he's better than that, but I still think he had a pretty decent game for his first game of his career.
Again, no complaints here. It was more so just like,
right.
I think if anything, the one complaint that I do have is actually that I don't think he was aggressive enough when it came to shooting the ball. Now he had 7 attempts. He had 4 attempts from downtown. He was 0-4 on all of them, but there was a point where he had what looked like a wide open 3 and elected to kick it back to like Aaron Holiday, I think at one point. And possession resulted in, I don't know if it was a made basket or a foul or whatever. But like Ime called him over to the bench and you could like the camera followed him and you could tell Ime was telling him something. I'm like 99% certain he was telling Reed, let it fly. Like when you are open, you need to shoot the ball. Hollins and Ackerman were even talking about it on the broadcast that there were points where, pardon me, where Reed was almost being like too selfless with the ball, right? Like he had the fast break opportunity with him and Jalen, where the defense just collapsed on Jalen. Like Jalen was gearing up for the lob, and Reed was ready to throw it, and then both defenders fell back. Like there was one tagging Jalen on the wing, and then the defender who was supposed to be checking Reed fell back because he was trying to prevent the Jalen lob. Reed had a wide open lane to either go up and lay it up or at least get to his little floater, and he just didn't do any of that. He just pulled it back out. So I think, you know, and we saw this a little bit in Summer League too, where like people were like, man, just, you're the number 3 overall pick. Just take more shots. Like we know you can shoot it, but that's also who he is as a player, right? He's not trying to step on anybody's toes. He's trying to make the right basketball play. And over time, I think Ime is going to give him that confidence that, dude, you are a shooter. You're maybe our best shooter. When you're open, let that thing fly, right? And we know that the shot's going to come. The defense was solid. He had active hands. There were multiple moments. He got little deflections, little steals. He had that one moment where he tied somebody up on a drive to the rim, forcing the jump ball. There was a lot to like out of Reed Sheppard's game in this one, and it's only going to go up from here for sure. Like I'm sure he knocks off the preseason jitters, the rookie jitters, and he'll be fine next game. But we got to talk about the big guy. And we mentioned him early on, Steven Adams. The screens were ridiculous. Like that was a revelation. Like until you have Steven Adams on your team and you see those screens and what they do for the players on your team, like he was opening up so much for Fred, for Jalen, for Amin, didn't matter who, for Reed, like whoever he was setting a screen for, it was like the parting of the Red Seas, because then ball handler gets a downhill drive with no defender in front of them, and it forces the defense into rotation, which means you're either getting an open shot right there in the mid-range or at the rim, leading to some of the dunks that we saw take place, or defender has to rotate in from the wing or from the corner, and then that's an easy kick out pass for a wide open 3. Like it's such simple offense, but that's what you get when you have such an elite screening presence like Steven Adams.
Yeah, man, the screen assists, man.
Screen assists. We're gonna be counting them up this
screen
season.
Assists, man. And that's what I'm saying. He helped Jalen so much. I felt like this game. I mean, even that first open 3 that Jalen hit in the second quarter was off of Fred VanVleet's kick out, but it came from a just absolutely crazy screen from Steven Adams. And I wonder what he's doing to guys there. They're just stuck. It's almost like they're like stuck on glue. They touched a web.
He's strong and he's wide. Like how many times do we watch Christian Wood set like these weak ass screens where he would like barely tag a defender with like the edge of his elbow, right? Steven Adams plants himself and he cannot be moved, right? Like, and so when a defender has to try and fight through there is no fighting through a Steven Adams screen. You got to go under on a Steven Adams screen. And if you do fight over it, you're going to spend a solid like 3, 4, 5 seconds trying to get around him. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, man, that was that was pretty special, man. I mean, I thought it was a good debut from Steven Adams, but you could kind of tell, though, I feel like Steven was moving a bit slow out there, man. I feel like you can tell he's coming off an injury. He just was quite a little step behind in some plays, and I thought as a defensive rebounder, I expected a little bit more. There was some times where they got the Utah Jazz got some offensive rebounds, and I'm like, man, who's in the game? And it's like, oh, Steven Adams down there. How are they even getting these? Yeah. And you can just tell, you got to remember that this guy is working back from some major injuries, and it's going to take him some time to get his full growth back. But it's still really good to see that the screening is in full effect.
Absolutely. Again, the offensive impact cannot be understated. The defense, I definitely got a sense, and it was kind of that stark contrast going from how good the Rockets looked as a collective 5-man defensive unit with the starters, and then once Steven was in there, absolutely, he was wrecking shop offensively, opening things up. But then defensively, he looked a little like a half step slow or a little behind. Some of that is definitely rust. Right? Yeah, I got to remember the last action that he had, the last like actual NBA action he had was all the way back in January 2023. It has been a minute since Steven Adams has been on an NBA court playing full speed basketball. So give him some grace, give him some time to get up to speed. The impact is still absolutely there. And I fully believe that Ime Udoka is going to understand that Adams is maybe not at true 100% capacity yet. And I fully expect that he's going to put the right pieces around Adams defensively. Think about guys that weren't even playing tonight, right? Guys like Dylan Brooks, guys like Tari Eason. He's going to put those other pieces around Steven Adams to make sure that there's no like drop off in the defensive intensity, or guys who can even just cover for him a little bit while he's still kind of getting up to speed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely agree with that, man. I'd like to talk about, or kind of shift gears a little bit, about just some of the nitpicks I had about, the Rockets, some of the things that I thought they made mistakes. Of course, they came out a bit rusty in our offense. I felt our defense was absolutely elite, but the offense kind of got off to a sputtering start. The shots weren't going in. Jalen had some pretty questionable turnovers. I thought some of them were okay, but some of them were, questionable. But more importantly, this game really opened up when the team got out running and gunning. And I think a big point of emphasis, I hope, that the coaching staff, talks about is Alperen Sengun and Jabari Smith early post-ups off misses and in the fast break. There were two possessions early in the game where the Rockets played incredible defense. Our guards are racing up the floor, they're pushing the ball, and Jabari Smith or Alperen Sengun are making a seal for a post-up early in the game, clogging the lanes. And that is something that they have been coached up their entire lives to do. Do your work early, get an early seal, but just because you're good at something or just because you're good at that doesn't mean that's what your team needs. And this team wants to play fast. So we can't be filling the lanes, with those guys, because that slows our offense down. It gives the other team an opportunity to get back and set their defense when you're posting up on a break or a missed shot. So those are like some points of emphasis. I remember Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving were having a conversation, and Kyrie was talking about, oh, y'all got to put me in the post in Brooklyn. You got to put me in the post. And KD was like, hey, yeah, we know you're going to cook in the post, but I don't see how that's good for the team, right? And it's like, just because you're good at something, it's the same thing that I had a problem with a team last year. Off a rebound, Jabari Smith or Alperen Sengun wants to run a break, wants to take 5 dribbles before they push the ball ahead. Just because you can do those things don't mean it's the best for the team. So I think once the team starts to iron things like that out, I think the Rockets offense will be even more potent, and we won't get off to such, slow starts.
Definitely. I mean, look, at the end of the day, if the Rockets are pushing tempo, if they're trying to score in transition, Jabari needs to be, parking himself out of the three-point line somewhere, spacing, and then Sengun needs to be floating towards the dunker spot, right, keeping that lane open for whoever's got the ball, whoever's trying to drive downhill, and then if his defender commits, right, if whoever's got the ball beats their man, then whoever is guarding Sengun, then that player has to commit over, and then Shingun's right there in the dunker spot waiting for a quick little dump-off pass or whatever, and then that's a much easier opportunity than him trying to do that early seal, whatever, and then suddenly it slows everything down, and then they're playing a half-court brand of offense instead of playing that nice up-tempo transition style offense that we'd like to see more of. My thing, too, is just if I'm going to nitpick on one thing, as exciting and as fun as that second quarter was, the Rockets scored 40 points. They gave up 37 to the Jazz.
Yep.
Like this is the trade-off, is can the Rockets play fast but still also maintain their defensive identity? Some of that comes from the bench guys who were playing in that quarter. Some of that comes from, some of the slower rotations, some of the struggles we talked about already with Steven Adams defensively being maybe a little half step slow on some of the rotations, things like that. But ultimately, what does it look like if the Rockets are playing full speed? If they're playing this up-tempo brand, if they're playing with more pace, then what does that do to their defense, right? Ime's doubled down on he doesn't just want to be a top 10 defense, he wants to get to top 5. Can they be another top defensive team while also still playing a faster brand of basketball? That's going to be the juggling act for the coaching staff and for these players, is figuring out meshing those two identities together. So I'm very curious to see how that kind of plays out over the course of the rest of this preseason and well into the regular season. That's going to be something that I think this Rockets team I don't want to say struggle with, but it's going to be something they have to work towards and really focus on and dedicate attention to detail to and stuff every single game, because it's really easy when you start letting it fly, when you're running up and down, it's really easy to get into a track meet with another team, and then you're letting them get easy buckets on the other end, right? You might still be lighting it up, but then they're going down after every made basket, and they're getting easy baskets. They're getting easy wide open shots because you're either playing winded or you're tired or you're not focused. You're not locked in on defense because you're thinking about the next offensive rep. Like, it's really easy to kind of lull yourself into that trap. So that's something I don't want to see out of this team. I don't want them to get away from their defensive poise this season. I think that does it for what we got. So unless you got anything else you wanted to chime in here.
How
nitpicky you're trying to be, Madison.
Man, it's just I just felt like we were over helping towards the end, and it led to
towards the end.
That's all. That's all.
Third stringers, get out of here towards the end of the game. We only care. Hey, look, we only care about approximately the first 28 or 30 minutes of this game. Okay, the rest of that, like, I did my job at watching that game, but none of anything of that the rest of the game mattered. Okay, like we saw Jack hit a three. I guess that was cool. We saw like Aaron Holiday just kind of mailing it in offensively. He looked like he wasn't really even wanting to be out there. We saw a Jayshawn Tate three-pointer, which I thought we were well past Jayshawn Tate three-pointers at this point in our lives, but I digress. It was a fun game. It was an exciting game. The young core looked good, and I can't wait to see him take the court again next Wednesday night against the OKC Thunder. I'm sure we'll still see some of the other old heads resting in that game as well, so it won't be a complete look at the roster just yet. We didn't talk about lineups or substitutions or anything in this game because it's hard to kind of understand what that's going to look like when we don't have the whole roster to kind of work with. So not much to take away from that. But we want to hear your thoughts, your reactions. What are your overreactions to the first Rockets preseason game? Drop your overreactions in the YouTube comments. Madison, you know the drill. Let everybody know where to track you down at.
Find me on Twitter at MadmanLeaks. Come talk Rockets basketball and NBA draft.
That's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Rockets. As always, thank you so much for checking out the show. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. And remember, listen every single day. That's the best way that you can help us grow our show. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.